morning, people. Welcome back to F Politics. Kemi Badenoch, the new leader of the Conservative Party, was just on the BBC with Laura Kuenssberg, and it was an absolute circus fire of dishonesty. Because now that the public have rejected the Conservative Party because all the lies they told, all the damage they've done, it's much harder to lie to the public because the reality of the things they were lying about are just too clear now. And so they now have to bring their lies as close to the truth as possible, but leave themselves just enough wriggle room so they can still be the heroes of the story.
When you are telling the truth, what's the truth about what went wrong with Boris Johnson? Was it honesty?
Well, you will remember that I resigned during the Boris Johnson government. I thought he was a great Prime Minister, but there were some serious issues which were not being resolved.
So far, very vague, and saying there were issues that were not being resolved is very passive. It's not, we did something wrong.
And I think that during that tenure, the public thought that we were no longer speaking for them or looking out for them. We were in it for ourselves.
And there she's saying the problem was the public's perception of the Tories, not the Tories themselves.
Some of those things I think were perception issues. A lot of the stuff that happened around Partygate was not why I resigned. I thought that it was overblown. We should not have created fixed penalty notices.
So the problem wasn't the fact that the Tory administration was having Christmas parties, dancing around indoors during a deadly viral pandemic. The problem was the fact that it was criminalised. So we're leaning hard into the Scooby-Doo defence of,
might have gotten away with it too. It wasn't for these blasted kids and their dogs.
But she goes even further than that.
The problem was that we should not have criminalised everyday activities the way that we did. People going out for walks, all of them having fixed penalty notices. That was what ended up, creating a trap for Boris Johnson.
But you guys weren't being fined for going on walks outside. You were being fined for having indoor parties, the precise kind of environments where coronavirus was spreading.
As long as we don't well, I'm pretty sure the president will say. Take that back. Laura, what do you think?
So even if the rules had been looser and allowed people to go on walks, you would still have been fined. And then we get another just straight up lie.
People in government didn't obey the rules, but they were not MPs. They were often staffers. And I think that the way that we had created those regulations ended up entrapping...
And the Prime Minister and the Chancellor both got fines. It wasn't just people who worked for them.
Indeed.
In the space of literally 10 seconds, she went from no MPs were fined for breaking the rules of lockdown to, yes, the top MPs in the country were fined for breaking the rules of lockdown. Again, the Tories are gradually realising there's a limit to how much they can lie to us, but they keep running up against that wall. But here's where she says she drew the line when it came to dishonesty.
When we had the issue with the Chris Pincher scandal, when ministers were sent out to say things that were not true, that was when I decided that things had gone too far.
That's referring to when Boris Johnson knowingly put a known sex pest, who he'd actually given a sex pest nickname to, in charge of party discipline, and then told all his ministers to go out and say that he had no idea what he'd done. But what Kemi Badenoch is saying here is that her red line is that politicians should not go out and say things that they know aren't true. Okay, carry on.
But simply just saying things and making promises to the whole country without knowing how you're going to deliver them, as we did on Brexit, as we did on net zero, I don't think is building trust.
So when Kemi Badenoch was downplaying all the fears that people had about what Brexit would do to this country, promising that it was all going to be okay, even though she ended up having to say,
Brexit was more traumatic, I think, for this sector than many others.
She and the Tories were making promises that they had no reason to believe were true because she just admitted they had no idea how they were going to deliver them. And meanwhile, the entire economic community was saying that Brexit will damage the country. And in my opinion, if you say something that you know you have no reason to believe is true, and the people who you know more than you are saying isn't true, that's a lie. When she refers to
when ministers were sent out to say things that were not true,
that includes her. Now, if part of your brain is thinking, okay, fine, they were dishonest back then, but at least they're coming clean now, the question you should be asking yourself is why? Why are they telling the truth now when they wouldn't back then? What's changed? The real difference is that Brexit, the policy the Tories spent the last 8 years promoting, has now actually happened, and the vast majority of the public believes that it has made us poorer, so they can't be lied to on this.
As a country, we are getting poorer. We are getting older. We are being outcompeted by many other competitor countries.
So if you think they're being honest now, I would like to check your definition of the word honesty, because for me, honesty does not mean I will only tell you lies that I think I can get away with. But if that's your definition of honesty, good luck in your relationships. And you can see that attitude about only being open and honest when it suits her when it comes to the previous Tory leaders. Because yesterday she said,
We have to be honest. Honest about the fact that we made mistakes. Honest about the fact that we let standards slip. The time has come to tell the truth.
And so today she was asked,
What is the truth about what went wrong with Liz Truss? Was it recklessness? Do you think that perhaps as the new leader, in order to move on, you should say sorry to the public about the turmoil that caused?
Well, Laura, what I'm here to do is talk about how I'm going to be leading the Conservative Party. We can have a post-mortem on each and every Prime Minister over the last 14 years, but I don't think that that's particularly helpful for your viewers. There will be a post-mortem. There's plenty of time for us to think about how we can improve the offer that we have for the public.
You stood on a platform yesterday and said it was time to tell the truth about what went wrong with your party.
Yes.
So,
and I have said that, but what I'm not going to do is sit down and go through line by line every single thing that everybody did wrong.
I'm just asking you what went wrong with Liz Truss, who was in power for a matter of weeks, who caused huge economic turmoil, who lots of people in your party said was disastrous for your prospects. So I'm just asking you what you think the truth is on what went wrong. We don't have to go on and on about it. Just brief it. What do you think went wrong?
But the point I'm making is that we had a historic defeat. I stood up yesterday and said that we need to be honest, that we got things wrong. What I don't want to do this morning is start listing all of the things we got wrong.
All she had to say was, unfunded tax cuts for the super rich is a bad thing for the economy and Liz Truss should not have done it. But she flat out refused to say that because that's the kind of economic policy that the people who support her in the Conservative Party kind of like. But because those same people don't like Rishi Sunak because of the levels of immigration he allowed and the taxes he raised, she's happy to criticise him.
Promises on immigration and on tax were not kept. And that's something that we need to change.
So she's willing to open up about how much she hates immigration, but she's not willing to open up about how damaging it is to the economy to build your economic policy around the wishes of billionaires and right-wing think tanks. So again, selective honesty is not honesty. And as a final bit of just rampant dishonesty, we have this.
Would you reverse the VAT hike on private schools?
Yes, I would. Because, and the reason why is because it's a tax on aspiration, but it won't raise any money. So things which we believe aren't actually going to raise money, there's not going to be an issue in terms of...
Well, the Treasury believes that it will raise money that's earmarked to go to state schools.
Forgetting, of course, the fact that the Treasury has already said that taxing private schools is going to raise about £1.7 billion, how dishonest do you have to be to actually come out with the words, taxing private schools will not raise any money? Literally, taking money will not mean you have money. And then she carries on.
So, by implication, again, if it meant taking money away from state schools, would you still reverse that?
Well, at the moment, certainly up until Labour came in, we didn't have this tax, so it's not taking money away from state schools. This is not what's happening.
But the budget just announced that part of the money taxed from private schools will be going to state schools. So if you stop that, you are literally taking money away from state schools. What are you talking about? Anyway, back to the main headline here. The leader of the Conservative Party has now officially stated that they sold us Brexit based on promises that they had no idea whether they could deliver. Boris Johnson called the Brexit deal unfair. Rishi Sunak said it's the reason why our exports are lagging behind other similar countries. Kemi Badenoch has now effectively said that it was sold on a lie. So I would hope that the mainstream media would now see that as a bit of license to maybe start to question Brexit a bit. Just a thought, because I definitely didn't see that from Kuenssberg today. Make sure you follow F Politics so politics doesn't F you. Have a great week.